thank you for being here. For starting this interview, maybe you can give us a little bit your background and what's your relationship with the Silicon Valley Fellowship.
Thank you for inviting me. It has been a really cool experience in Silicon Valley, and now coming back here and with the community, which is also here. It is really incredible, the network that it has been created with all this. And so my background, I'm a mathematical engineering student, master student at the Politecnico di Milano. But I've done some experiences. I've been a visiting researcher for Stanford. And I've also visited other places with the university, like exchange student in India, in Spain.
Indian Institute of Technology, right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
One of the most important universities.
Yeah, exactly. Like I went there without any context, without knowing anything, and then I discovered that it is a really huge thing there, being in a IIT university. Yeah, and then other experiences like in Spain and some internships in Spain and Silicon Valley, like a lot of experiences.
What kind of internships, like in tech?
Worked for McKinsey. And I've also worked for a smaller company in the digital marketing field, and now I'm also working with the SVEC, which is the Silicon Valley Italian Executive Council.
It's like run by Giacomo Marini and Zappacosta, that are like the founders of Logitech.
Yeah.
They've been like in Silicon Valley for many decades now.
It's really interesting because it is a very incredible community, and if you get there and you are Italian, you are a little bit lost, and you have that, you can talk with a lot of interesting people then that can help you.
We did like an event just yesterday with like the batch of this month, so it was super cool. So how did you end up in Silicon Valley, like your first time?
Yeah, my first time was when I got there for my visiting researcher period with Stanford, but it was a lot of time that I was dreaming about it. I would really love to go there because in my future I would love to explore better the startup world. So I knew that it was like the place where to go if you want to do that.
And how did you manage to secure your position as a visiting researcher? Did you apply also to other labs? What was your path that led you to doing research at Stanford?
First of all, I started with the US. I wanted to go there in Silicon Valley, but I was like, okay, this is my plan A, but I have to start around and maybe then reaching there in another way. So I started contacting a lot of people. This is really important. If you want to do something, create a network in that field. So I started with creating a huge network in that field, in the research world in the US. But then I was lucky because it was a mix of luck and personal work and network, of course, because since when I started my bachelor in mathematical engineering, I've always done research as a side project with a lab in Politecnico, Next Lab.
Okay.
And so I started...
Right?
Exactly. So I started doing research since my bachelor, and then I met in a mentoring project for mathematical engineers, a postdoc at Stanford.
Okay.
And that was working on the same topics I did my research before.
Okay. It was
Exactly. So it was a mix of a lot of things, a lot of variables. I was lucky, but also I was doing a research on my own. So, a lot of factors.
And then how did you get in touch with the Silicon Valley Fellowship? Why did you decide to apply to this program and do this experience?
Yeah. So when I was there at Stanford, I really wanted to live fully the experience. So to explore everything and to go deep in every possible field, in particular in the startup world.
Yeah.
So it seemed to me a really important thing that could help me creating my network and discovering more about Silicon Valley. So that when I discovered that, I was pushing a lot. Oh, can you tell me when you organize this? Because I'm really interested. And then you told me, oh, there is this batch that I'm organizing, and I applied. And
And what can you expect like from this experience? How long is it? What's like the typical day?
So it is really interesting because in a typical week you can discover different things. So the startup world or the tech world, the corporate world, but also the research world. So it is really interesting because you have a lot of opportunities. Even if you don't know exactly where you want to focus, you have a whole idea of all different things that you can find there. And so in a typical day, you can either talk with a mentor in the startup field, so a founder, an investor, or also going in a university where you can talk with the person that are doing research there or professors, but also going to Google to visit Google campus or Tesla, as in my case. It was amazing. So really you have a full image of what's happening there in Silicon Valley. I think it's really wonderful. What's really interesting about this opportunity is that it's not only 1 week. You are creating a community with this experience. It is not only that moment. You know, you have created something that lasts. And also there is the Slack community where you can still talk with people, you can share ideas, opportunities. After that, you can start a relationship with a mentor, and then get to big opportunities with referrals. It's a butterfly effect.
And now, what's your plan like for the next few months, for the next few years?
First of all, I would love to graduate
Okay.
so that I can focus on my projects. So I'm finishing my master now, and then my plan is to come back to Silicon Valley and keep going with startup ideas. And I will join a Stanford program for
Okay.
startups and.
At the accelerator by Stanford.
Exactly. So I will join that in summer batch, and ideally, I would love to create a startup there with other peers there. So
Okay, like mainly in I guess AI and healthcare.
yeah, maybe it would be interesting, but I'm really flexible and open to all ideas. But yeah, it would be great to keep going with my background. So tech field, AI, it would be.
Okay. Happened like several times that people did this experience. Then they remain in contact with the mentors and also with other fellows. And then they started brainstorming for other like side projects. Some of them came back for like internships or like full-time jobs there in the US or maybe even in the academic field, like coming back there as like visiting a researcher or for a master or a PhD.
Exactly, you have the opportunity to keep in touch with your mentor or with the other that joined the program. And in my case, it was useful because I still talk with mentors, and yeah, that's really important. You develop a relationship with them, which is not only in that week. So that's how opportunities start. Like you start a relationship with a mentor or someone that you met there, and then you can you can discover opportunities about visiting researchers, opportunities, jobs, and so on.
Yeah, there is like a lot of serendipity like in Silicon Valley. A lot of
Yeah.
opportunity. What do you think that differentiate Silicon Valley as an innovation hub? Like, what do you think is a good place to be?
Yeah, the thing is that I've explored some places where technology is really advanced, but I've never felt what I felt there in Silicon Valley because if it happens often that I talk with somebody in some places describing my ideas, and they're like, "Oh, are you serious? Maybe it's too much, or maybe you're really ambitious." Oh, like I should reconsider something. I've never felt this way in Silicon Valley. You're like saying something incredible, and they're like, "Oh yeah, let's plan how to do that." It's not, oh, maybe it's too much, maybe, oh, there is this problem. No. In fact, I remember when I had to raise money for the Stanford Startup Program, it was a mess because I had to find like a lot of money, a huge amount of money in 20 days. I was desperate. I started emailing everyone, and a lot of people like outside Silicon Valley were like, oh, that's a lot. Maybe you should reconsider it. While in Silicon Valley, people were like, oh, that's amazing. We will find money, don't worry. And they were like suggesting me some ways to do that, some practical ways to do that. it was not impossible. And it was really useful because at the end I was able to raise my money. It was really, really intense, but I did it. And that's something amazing about Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Do you have also tips and recommendation for the fundraising for the Silicon Valley Fellowship?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was thinking that there are a lot of ways to do that. You should think about it as an investment. It is not going to vacation, so you should consider it as an investment. So you should consider a lot of innovative ways maybe to do that. There is obviously the Next Gen Fund scholarship that I was lucky to be selected for, but there are also a lot of ways. I know stories about really creative stories about people raising money from companies, foundations, universities. So there are a lot of ways. Clearly, you have to be active to find it, like to ask to professors, to universities. There are examples of people that were sponsored by universities. There are people that were doing tech scouting for their companies. So they were searching for other talents in Silicon Valley. So in this way, they were paid from the companies.
Just go there, you do some like business development or understanding what trends and the technologies over there, and then doing a report for the companies in Europe that of course they don't have access or they don't have like knowledge of those different things.
There are a lot of ways, and there are foundations that can sponsor you. You should be creative.
Yeah, like it happened in several cases, even like crowdfunding, many universities where maybe it was like the first time that a student applied from that university, so there was not like clear standard path, but like a lot of people started asking professors or like different research labs, and like in some way they showed that there was like a real value to provide also to the university, and so they got funded. That's also how I did it, for example, in my case a few years ago with my university.
So my suggestion would be apply, give your best in the interviews, try to overcome the selection process, and after that start to focus on the raising, because if you start before, you would be like, oh, maybe it's impossible. After that, you have the possibility, that you can do that. You will start thinking your ways to raise money.
And then you can also, of course, getting help for the fundraising from the community. Like a lot of people, I guess, reached out to you.
Exactly. You will be helped by other people that find their way with the sponsors.
Thank you very much, Angelica.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and see you in Silicon Valley.